Welcome back, everybody. My name is Lindsay, and this is Linda's Investing. Today, I bring you another guest. She's recently started investing in real estate, and I'll let her introduce herself. Miss Ashley, how are you doing?
Doing pretty good. Um, I'm a first-time investor. It's my first year. I am investing from out of state in the Bay Area near San Francisco. So California was not what I wanted to be investing in for my very first round. And I'm currently holding a long-term rental single family house in upstate New York in Rochester.
Awesome. So, out of state investing, a lot of people think that out of state investing is something that's so complicated and so hard to do. You mentioned that you picked a different market in California because you live in the Bay Area. And if anybody knows anything about the Bay Area, houses like fixer-upper houses go for $1 million.
Easy.
And so you moved that to out of state. How did you come about to that decision?
Yeah, a lot of research, a lot of being online, a lot of hours just in front of the computer, a lot of listening to what worked and what didn't work for other investors. So going through a lot of like YouTube channels, going through a lot of Reddit posts, a lot of bigger podcast posts, and kind of seeing some like overarching themes of, you can definitely go broke buying cheap, like Zuber says. And there are still ways to do it in a kind of like risk managed way outside of state. So I was looking for, just like Dion says a lot, those economic drivers. And at the same time, I was also learning more about real estate. So I kind of used that buffer time of looking for an area to be in to also get up to speed with just all the vocabulary that we kind of just casually use, like those BRRRR, DSCRs, like all those acronyms, and also looking at my markets at the same time. And I kind of did like just like a funnel system of what was really attractive to me. So, especially post 2020, I wanted to be in an area that a lot of people have to physically be there and can't leave for, um, like, they're like the major university there is like a tech university, and everyone now has to do remote or is able to do remote. So, I was definitely looking for cities and areas that kind of are like people pullers and that people specifically have to be there to do whatever functions of that area, especially like airports, very high up on my list, teaching universities, anything with like a strong medical infrastructure, whether that's like clinical support or hospitals, anything of that like person to person level where I could trust that a lot of people kind of have to stay there for a while. Those cities all went high on my list. And um, I'm also very risk adverse. So that came into my research as well. So when I'm on these posts and I'm seeing sinkhole took my house in Florida, I was like, nope. Hurricane in middle America, I was like, nope. Um, just, other crazy things. Like I don't want my tenants to have to deal with like major climate issues, and when it comes to looking at temperate environments, the Great Lakes area, um, it's lovely. It has like mild winters, no crazy hurricanes or tornadoes. So that area already kind of caught my interest. And then I just honed in on those economic drivers. I honed in on signs of kind of like at least a healthy maintenance of population. So I wasn't exactly looking for something that was like population boom or, like everyone's moving to Austin. I was looking for kind of like steady places that have like held the test of time. And I also kind of wanted to see like a level of resilience because something's going to happen. Like there's all these unprecedented events. And I liked seeing that even though there were some big companies that came through Rochester area and they held a lot of people through employment, when those companies went down, it's not like the city folded. The city had other means of stabilizing their economy. And I'd like seeing that they had that resilience. So Rochester was very, very attractive to me. And then also that low entry point and the diversity of areas. It's not like the majority of the city is a C class area. It's very much a mid city kind of style where like a mid-sized city where, you have those kind of like sketchy little zones that, I feel like every city has like some kind of version of like Skid Row or some place where you'd be like a little uncomfortable at night, a little on guard. But then they also have the areas that, there's an Apple store, a Lululemon, there was like definitely more A and B class areas. So I like seeing that there was a mix of choices and where I could invest in that one city. And then probably the biggest push to me coming to Rochester was at the time I was still also talking to property managers, especially like once I got closer to meeting my goals for down payment, closing cost, appraisal. Once I was like really kind of like secure financially in that aspect, I got more confident with like reaching out to property managers, and I saw that there was a really big spread in terms of like their approaches, And some people, they're really hungry, they really want to go for it, and they seem very enthusiastic. But then when I ask them about like their company and their infrastructure, they're like, "Oh yeah, I have to get a contractor for this. I need to talk to my guy for that." And I was like, "Okay, that's fine, but um I was kind of looking for someone that was more established. Like I want to hear that you kind of have your own electrician on staff, your own plumbers, and that you're able to respond really, really quickly and you're able to handle any tenant issues very soon. Like I've lived in kind of bad apartments, so like I know how that feels like. And I know that for me, like the clock started ticking when I felt like my rent was not showing its worth. So I felt like to hold a good tenant, I really have to have a good property management. So when I found somebody who really aligned with my values and my communication, I was like, okay, this is for sure it. And so far, that property management company has just been wonderful.
How many property managers did you talk to before you settle on one?
Um, I think around five. I
Yeah.
think around five. But that's who I actually got to talk to. There was a whole bunch that just ghosted me. There was a whole bunch who like didn't get back or got back like a week later. And at that point, like you're not even on my radar, you know?
Hmm. Hmm. Okay. And then, so Rochester, New York, just because I'm curious, on your research stage, what other cities did you see pop up as potentials?
Yeah, I was really looking at Syracuse for a while just because it was close enough to Rochester for the benefits, and then it has that university. I was also really looking at Buffalo. I wasn't crazy about New York, just because of how strong the tenant laws are. So I was like very apprehensive about that. And then I was also looking at parts of Ohio and a little bit like I was kind of considering like Detroit, Michigan areas or like around like Michigan University a little bit.
Hmm.
Um, yeah.
Okay. And then why did you pick real estate over other investments?
Yeah, so I had kind of just been on autopilot for like my financial situation for a while, and I hadn't really challenged too much of my plan until 2020. And then um and then I was seeing how much inflation really affects things. Like it's something I always expected to happen like over the long term. And then I was seeing um that with those rising inflations, that the assets I was holding, which at that time was mainly like stocks and things like that I wasn't at the level where I could creatively curb against that. And when I was seeing how other people deal with inflation, and those financial strategies, one that came up was just real estate. And I was like, oh, okay, like maybe I'll buy like one investment property. And then when I was going to looking into the details of like what it takes to buy one investment property, I saw there's a whole community of people who use that for financial independence, and that it's not just something that only a certain amount of very rich people can do. It's like very average people at very different levels of financial income. So kind of started off as just like a, whoa, inflation's kind of scary to a, this could be something that really, solidifies my financial future.
Yeah. My experience was that I was investing in the S&P 500
Mm,
and index funds, through retirement accounts, through brokerage accounts. And so when I learned that about all of becoming wealthy or becoming a millionaire through, the stock market, which will take, around 20 years if you're very diligent about it. And then I came with the 2020 pandemic, and I did not want to work anymore because I was a nurse and a healthcare worker, and that was kind of a very traumatic stage for me. But it was like I need to do something else. I need to find a way of becoming self-independent, not needing a job without waiting 20 years for like might as well wait for retirement, right? Without working like 12 hours every day. So yeah, real estate provides that cushion because it has the potential of replacing your income. It has the potential to making you retire early. It has the potential for you to even cut down your hours, for example. And it was a slow switch for me, but also like a drastic switch. Okay, so what was the book or podcast or person that you were listening to like that made you think, oh, maybe I can do that too?
Dion. A lot of Dion.
A lot of what?
Yeah. A lot of Dion McNeely. I
Oh,
love listening to his YouTube channel. And then through him, and then also around that same time, I kind of got on the radar of When Rent All the Time, Michael Zuber, but I wasn't really engaged in the community. And then kind of like on the YouTube algorithm, I also saw that there was just a variety of ways that people were approaching real estate. So Dion's method just appealed a lot to my sense of risk and my sense of like I've worked so hard to get what I have. I don't want to like I don't want to risk my good position anyway. And his game plan kind of just showed like how you can really conserve wealth and grow it. And then when it came to kind of investing out of state, um, the the Lady Landlords channel, Becky Nova, that also just showed me how somebody with the right amount of time, with the right amount of experience, they don't even have to be in the continental US to be doing well, kind of like financial firefighter like Pittsburgh, I think Becky is in Puerto Rico at the moment. Maybe not, but her properties are also New York. So she was doing that out of state, long distance, managing long distance. And then there's just a couple other uh, more like strategic portfolio growth. Like April Crosley has a lot of really good systems. I think her YouTube is Lazy Girl REI. And I just really liked how kind of even like pre-Hemlane, she was already working with these property management softwares. And it's something that's on my radar because I think that potentially maybe like 10 to 15 years down the line, I might, especially if I feel secure enough to like leave my W-2, I might take over property management. So I like learning about those systems now so that I can apply that later. And it won't just be something that I have to like crash course. It's something that I already see people, I see what works for them, what hasn't worked for them. So April Crosley has a lot of really good systems. And Bigger Pockets, they have a lot of good case studies, but I would say what was like the most useful thing for me from Bigger Pockets was their online forum because a lot of people go to them with problems. And I think that was really valuable before I even got started because I was able to see that it's not always just like smooth linear path, that there's a lot of like bumps along the road. And so it made things like knowing that like other people will go through plumbing issues, other people will have like placing tenants problems. That gave me a really strong sense of what I could expect for that first year. So I wasn't like, because like I've had problems in my property, nothing too big, nothing too major, but they strengthened my conviction of my team. They didn't break me, They were just like, oh, there's a clogged sink. And I got to see that the same day that the tenant called was the same day they responded. So there's little things like that that I might not have expected if I hadn't seen how many issues other people had. And then I think it also helped me with just refining what I wanted because seeing that first time investors were doing burst strategies, what sometimes works out perfectly, but other times can be really complicated. That kind of helped guide me to being like, okay, like for my first one, what do I want? And what does a vision of that look like? And figuring out exactly what I wanted, and then spending the time to like really get to know the Rochester real estate environment. That helped me move really quickly when I needed to. Because the way I kind of think about getting that first property is that I went really, really slow so that I could go fast because it's a hot market. So things disappear like sometimes 3 to 5 days after being listed. So if you don't move quickly, especially in the right areas, that property is gone. And I had spent a lot of time just, solidifying my buy box, going through Trulia, Apartments.com, Craigslist, and Zillow, and Rent. One to just see like what area average rents were, but also to get a sense of, if I have like a 3 bedroom, 1 bath, what does it have to look like to get to the rent where other people are charging? And then how long would it stay on the market? So all that research really helped me know exactly what I wanted. And when I first came into this, I was really dead set on small multifamily and like it's duplexes or triplexes or nothing. But it did not cash flow. It did not cash flow. And the ways it could cash flow was like very much outside of my entry point. So it's not something that is going to be a never for me. It probably will be something maybe a little later on in my journey, maybe. But the single family houses do really well, especially the closer to the suburbs that you are. So when I found one that was a 3 bedroom, 2 bath, and then had a very large and like closed off family room that had doors, I was like, I'm looking at a 4 bedroom place here, you know, right? So I moved on that as quickly as physically possible, and they like accepted my offer in 2 days. So yeah, it was
Awesome. A
fast.
lot of good points. A lot of good points. I think being on the forums early on, thinking about real estate and seeing people come up with struggles, it's not something that everybody does. Because like a lot of people that go into real estate are like looking at the spreadsheets for a long time, like that analysis paralysis. And then by the time it becomes reality, any little thing that comes up that it was not in a spreadsheet, all of a sudden can send you into turmoil of like, why did I do this? Like, this is why people don't invest. Any little struggle, any little stone on the way, instead of like picking up the stone and putting it away, they're like, oh no, this is why. This like, let me get out of this deal. Like, I cannot deal with this. But it really is like, I don't know if you think about just regular life, like going to college, spending 4 years, getting a job. It's not an easy path, right? It's like there's a studying, there's testing, if you have any to take any licenses, sure. Or then applying for a job, you have to compete with other people. Like it takes a while. And then with every single step, you're gonna get more experience in real estate. And like the best part that you said to do is like get around people that are also doing it. Like follow people that are telling you the truth, not just, people that are like, spend money here and then you'll be a millionaire. People that are also experiencing and going through the things that you've gone through, or even harder things, right? So you settle in Rochester, New York. And what was the entry point? What was the purchase price on that first home?
140K.
140K. So four
Yeah.
bedroom to bat, and what you could rent it for.
So we originally listed for 2000, and the average area rent is 2100, but the properties in those areas are um I'll say the ones that are coming at 2100 are probably a lot younger and had a lot more extensive rehabs and probably had a lot more bells and whistles than my little old 1900s house. Um, However, it's probably like a B class house on an A plus street. So we held it at 2000 for 2 months and then went down to 1800 and it was rented that month.
Mhm.
So I had run my numbers at about 1500 and I was at that time happy with the 1500 income, but after getting it rented out for 1800, my cash on cash return was about 9.8%. So for me, I was still like, yay. And it worked out. But again, I use those conservative numbers and I was hoping to get above like 5% or better for my first one. I was I don't want to, I did not want to like break even though I see how like that math can make sense. And considering how solid of a neighborhood I was in, like I could have maybe like breaking even, whatever. But what hurts my head about that is that if there are big issues, you're going negative and you're going negative real quick. So even coming into the property with reserves, I definitely want positive, like positive cash flow. And I also just wanted to make sure that I could still give myself the best experience with my first property as possible. So another thing too that when I was in the learning phase of things, I literally wrote down like what my 10-year real estate path could look like. And I put in as much knowledge as I had about what other people's path were like. And one person I also listen to on YouTube a lot is Coach Carson. And he was mentioning how, like, you, at a certain point in your journey, you can really speed things up if you have to by selling one of your properties and then using that to go towards some, like maybe all of them or just one other one that has like a really high interest rate or something. And then you like step up your cash flow that way. So I was thinking too that if I want to have kind of like an easy first try for my first property, I want to make this as smooth for me and my property management as possible, then probably my first property should be more of that appreciation play. It should be something more that I know I have a good exit. Like I could sell this house today very easily. Um, and that the neighborhood over the last 20, 30 years has been appreciating solidly. It's not something that I have to gamble on appreciation. Like I've already seen that track record of appreciation. So when I was going through my buy box, there was definitely that criteria in mind that there was like a solid trend of appreciation. And it just gives me kind of peace of mind for later on in my journey. And it tells me that even though I probably won't stick with that same strategy because property taxes are a concern. And if I had 10 A plus properties, um, I don't know how I could exactly stay in the game with property taxes going up, but it definitely gives me peace of mind that for my next chapter, I can pivot because I already have that little solid moneymaker where I have cash flow and appreciation.
Mhm. Amazing. So, so many people that you listen to, like they have different takes. Coach Carson has a take of appreciation, a little bit over cash flow. Dion also the same. And then there's other people that prefer cash flow over appreciation. Where do you think you lie on that scale?
I want both. I don't think I have to choose. I don't think I
You
have to
have to
choose.
choose
And I also,
right now.
no, I can't. I can't. And I think that it just limits my options further down the line. And I think that, and that's another thing too, like it's hard to leave Rochester because it, like, again, like it has all these diverse little pockets where if you really understand these neighborhoods, it is difficult to buy, but it's easy to find a B class street in a C class neighborhood where if we like could travel forward in time, we would probably see a Starbucks on that corner. You know, we'd probably see like really good signs of, gonna say it, but gentrification, really good signs of like growth, you know. So I know those little pockets and those areas that exist, and it could still give me cash flow. It's not going to be as cheap as someplace a little closer to the D areas, but it could still give me a much higher return and less property tax issues. So that is something that I see in the future, property tax being a problem. But I think if I diversify my strategies and I get a little bit of cash flow, a little bit of appreciation, it will get me where I want to go. And I just want to always keep my options open. I think that there's no version of myself that would ever be in a war zone. I think I'm just way too averse to risk for that. Um, and if I ever got there, it would be because I have such crazy reserves that it's more about giving back to the neighborhood than worrying about like how long I can keep a tenant. Because that's a good thing too about like really getting into the Trulia and the Craigslist. Like once you look at how often an apartment or a unit comes back, you really get to see why some places are priced where they're priced, you know? Yeah.
How are you finding your deals? Like founding?
Yeah, so the first one, it was off the MLS and it was with a real estate agent who I found on Facebook because that was another thing too. When you're coming out of state, there are some kind of like preconceptions that you have to deal with that, people on the ground have. And I would say that Rochester has, I think, been burned a little bit by out of state investors.
Mm,
Um, it's nothing that like agents have said straight to my face, but just, looking on Facebook groups and things like that, there are people that come in, they buy like like 20, $30,000 house in a really tough neighborhood and they can't afford the burr or something happens and that place just stays there empty. And then there's also people that blame some of the rising prices on out of state investors, but I don't think there's enough of us to really make those changes. I think it's just they used to their parents saying that like, oh, I bought this house at like 10K, 15K, and hey, it's 20, 30 years later, it's no longer 10K, 15K. It's not just out of state investors, it's time, it's places appreciating, it's changes in the environment. Um, so there was a little bit of that, but I found a real estate agent who was willing to give me videos, give me lots of pictures, communicated really quickly. So that that really helped the whole process because I'm not texting her and then waiting for 2 days later. She would respond back like immediately. And when it came to like negotiating, when it came to getting the finer details of the closing, it really went smoothly because she was so on it. And I would definitely do another deal with her. I just don't know if the next phase that I'm trying to get into really aligns with what's worth her time because she got like 3% commission on a 140K house. My next couple of purchases will not be for 140K. I'm definitely going to be going for that more cash flow level of assets. I already have a couple of neighborhoods that like again like have like that B plus street in that C plus area and those houses are much cheaper. I mean, I'll see if she'd want to be on that, but I'm also trying out a little bit of the seller financing life. So I have been annoyingly talking to a couple people a day. So I have currently a goal of like two listing agents or two real estate brokers that I'm just reaching out to and seeing if they either have any people that they know who are trying to sell for owner financing or Rochester is a really investor heavy kind of real estate market. So I've already seen listings that they say owner financing available, but their
mm,
terms are wild. Their terms are not for me. I still put in my offer. I still try. I still like
mhm,
maybe. But I even listed this, I think, on ORAT, and now I can give more details because that deal is dead. But for a 4 bedroom, 1 bath in low key scary area. This person had listed for 100K, which sounds pretty good for this area. 100K. Um, they want 20% down, and they want 9% interest. But I think their little carrot is that they're willing to go for 30 years and no balloon payment out.
mhm.
But 9% interest, who do you think is going for that? And I mean, like,
Right.
maybe somebody with no other options. That's got to be it because that's crazy.
Mhm. Makes sense. But how much do you think the house is worth?
Um, there's comparables in the area that are selling for 70 to 80, but they need work. They need probably another like 20 to 30K in rehab. And there are some other ones that are turnkey that are around like 130, 135. And those are ready to go. So I could see why they're pricing it that way because at 9% interest, they're going to be making like double what that house is worth in 30 years. Um, and that low price is definitely to bring people in who know that for turnkey, which is what this place is, like they did a great job with, everything's done. It's pretty much rent ready. Like you could move in tomorrow. So they know that. And I think that's why the 9% interest, 20% down is coming in there or they really don't trust that they'll get somebody who has a stable history of paying people back. They're probably thinking their applicants have like a really low credit score or something and can't conventionally apply for loans. So maybe the 9% is to curb their risk, but The 100K is definitely to bring people in, and yeah, it did. Like I still bit.
And then didn't come back with any no,
Nope.
they
Like
stayed at
I
the
put in,
9%.
okay, 10% down, 7% interest, like I'm trying to meet you here, buddy.
Yeah,
Because at least that's close to like what they would get in a monthly payment. So like I was structuring my deal around like how can I still get to like what I think they want for a monthly payment. Um, but at my stage in the game, I'm trying to keep as much as my capital as possible in my pocket, which is why I'm still entertaining like these seller financing deals.
yeah,
I also know that I'm going to collect a whole bunch of no's before I hear one yes. And that is okay with me too, because um, one thing I have realized with this last year of holding my property is that doing what I have been doing, which has just been looking at my buy boxes, um, keeping up to date with just things in Rochester in general, it hasn't really helped me get to that next level in real estate. I just know Rochester a lot better. I know my buy box a lot better. But it hasn't really given me other new skills. And so when I went back into ORAT and when I started looking more at the real estate game and like I saw your interview on bigger podcasts, I was like pockets. I was seeing that other people are doing some really creative deals. Other people are slimming their numbers with different ways. And um, that's definitely appealing. I don't think I would do as risky of a journey as like the bird method for me. I don't know if that really aligns with what I'm comfortable with, but there are bits and pieces of it, especially seller financing, where I'm like, yeah, that's tenable. And then again, when I think of like my 10-year journey and I do the math for how much interest I'm giving a bank that's not even a bank that's a national bank, most likely, a bank that's not even in the community I'm investing in,
mhm,
I don't love those numbers, like I don't love that I will probably be giving $1 million of my money, $1 million of my money to somebody who does not need that at all and who probably forecloses on people in my community like that. So that's another reason why I like seller financing is really like appealing to me because at least that way I know somebody who's worked as hard and probably way harder than I ever have and like finding these properties, maintain them well, like they deserve like twice the value of that house in interest. They deserve
mhm.
that cash flow. Like a national bank, mm.
Interesting viewpoint. Um, just going back to that seller finance deal before you say, is that doesn't cash flow at what he's asking for.
It does cash flow what we're asking for. It does. It
And
does.
then you're saying the price is under, like it's under what the property will price for. Okay, so just putting information out here, like why don't you lock up the deal and then it's 6 months or 3 months cash out refi with the conventional law?
Oh, I definitely probably could. I definitely probably could. Um, and that is a strategy I might do for the next one. They have not responded back to me. So so I couldn't even if I wanted
It's
to. I
not
have a
dead
horrible
yet.
feeling. I know. It's been a couple of days, so it's not like who knows, but they haven't gotten back to me. It seems unlikely, but maybe. I have a horrible feeling that someone saw those terms and was like, yes. And they probably have somebody, which is fine, which is fine. But yeah, that's definitely like a refinance strategy is definitely a possibility. Especially because like the ARV would still be good. It is just that I I never got back I never heard back
Yeah.
from him. And then um I think the rates are still way cheaper. Um yeah, it's definitely a strategy. If he got back to me, I would probably, and then yeah, yeah. And there was also there's no prepayment penalty.
Right.
Like they advertise that too. So like that's also wonderful to see. Yeah.
Another way to cement that would be asking your realtor, like, what do you think this property will sell for in the normally in the MLS? And because I think one of the trickiest things to investing is like calculating that ARV. Because you don't know for sure unless like you get an appraisal, and then even appraisals can be wrong at times. They can come lower than what you're expecting to. So better underestimate. But if you're getting a lower price with a high interest rate and it still cash flows and you're able
Yeah,
to change that interest rate with another lender, then it will cash flow even more.
absolutely, absolutely. The only thing about this deal that's not amazing is the area is notorious for high turnover, like
Hmm.
pretty high turnover.
I think that's why the
So,
hesitancy is not in
yeah,
a nicer neighborhood like your first deal.
no. I mean, I still went for it. I still would get back to them if they reached out to me. You
Hmm.
know, I would still definitely do your plan with like no prepayment penalty. Like, why not? And like, yeah, I definitely do qualify for everything that would take to refinance. Yeah, it is just those areas are maybe like 1 to 2 years that you might hold a tenant, you know? So even though they're single family, they kind of move like apartments.
Hmm. If the area is a little bit rough, do you think is there a Section 8 possibility there too? Oh, okay. Okay.
Absolutely.
Does your
Absolutely.
property manager take Section 8? Okay, awesome.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And what I also like about their Section 8 approach is that they still keep the same standards that they have, even for Section 8 tenants.
Right.
So that gives me a lot of peace of mind.
Hmm. Which is something people don't understand. Like they have, there's a negative connotation with Section 8, right? When people hear of tenants or Section 8, but you can still have your pre-qualifications. Yes, your interest rate might not be as high as like what you would expect, let's say you living in NorCal or me living in SoCal, and what to expect like a 700 credit score. Yeah, it might not be 700, it might be 650, 620, but you can still have the qualifications like no past criminal history. The portion of the income that they receive has to be 3 times of what their rent is supposed to be, like their qualified rent they're supposed to be, and all of the other things that you want, like no pets or whatever. But
Yeah.
yeah, there needs to be more education in that particular area. Um,
And one thing I also really like that my property management does is if they go for two landlord recommendations. So I figure, okay, like your previous landlord might really want you out, and they might just be like, yeah, this person's amazing. Please take them off my hands. But the one before that hopefully has less reason to lie to a property manager, you know? So at least they'll get somebody who I feel like we have a reasonable chance of hearing more of the truth.
mhm. Yeah, it makes sense. No past evictions. I forgot about that. But yeah. Uh, what have you learned about yourself in investing in real estate?
Yeah, I think partially is that um I am still really adverse to risk. I I I always make really slow money moves in general. Like in my personal finance, everything is pretty well thought out, and I definitely get a lot of opinions before I make anything big. Um, and I feel like that's pretty much the same way I invest. However, I'm kind of always ready to change my mind when it comes to when new information comes in. So that that is part of my journey that I'm still kind of in the mix of, especially because with all the kind of different possibilities I've been seeing, being exposed through Aura and just learning more about what other people are doing. Um, there's a lot more than that one kind of path that I thought I would be going on. And yeah, so I definitely feel like there's a lot more flexibility for me in the future. I still have kind of my main goals, but how I'm getting there, I'm a lot more open to changing to whatever kind of best suits. So I guess I'm learning that I'm more adaptable than I kind of previously thought, because in some other areas of my life, I'm very strategic, disciplined, rigid, kind of just like this is the plan. We're all doing the plan. This is it. Um,
You're not following the
but
plan.
I know, I know, I know. But when other people's results are really good and there's more possibilities out there, I don't really see why I have to stick to my previous idea of the plan because one other thing too that when I was thinking kind of like my exit from real estate, I just always assumed I would sell or finance to another investor. But kind of being more into the mix of what other people are doing, hearing more about how some people are seller financing back to their tenant. And now they don't have to worry about property taxes. Now they don't have to worry about utilities. Now they don't have to worry about property management. And that person who has been there with like 20, 30 years, they get to own that house that they've already like made a home. So for me, that really appeals. I know that won't be a fit for every tenant I have, but that's like another exit that I hadn't really thought about. I hadn't thought about at all. It wasn't even on my radar. So getting into Aura has kind of exposed me to those ideas. Um, and also that I don't scare that easily. So, like, I have a lovely little owner portal, and a couple months ago there was a sewage backup, and I was like, "Oh, they fixed it. Cool." I wasn't like, "Oh no,
You're like
sewage," you
jumping on
know?
the phone, like, what do you mean there's a search backup?
Nope. I saw that they fixed it. I saw they deal with it. I saw they sprayed it down. I was like, "Okay, that's fine. That's fine." And I will say a big part of that is because I do keep my cash reserves. Like I had the cash reserves even coming into the property too. And that is also because one thing I did that I mentioned when I was talking to Frank, but I will just say for anyone that's like looking for Rochester, looking for turnkey in Rochester, it is really hard to get an inspection in that time frame because these houses move, within 7 days. So
Mm,
I waived the inspection and I knew I would have to waive the inspection. Because of that, I didn't come in, put a tenant and start saving 15%. I came in with reserves
money.
specifically in case my property management's like, hey, we turn on the water and guess what? Your two bathrooms, they both have crazy leaks.
Mhm,
I came in kind of like expecting the worst and having like a couple K already set aside in case there was like major electrical, plumbing, whatever. I had a really good feeling that there wouldn't be that. And I would say this more than a feeling just because another thing too, when I'm looking at these properties, I'm looking to see how long there's been owner turnover. And the person who had held this house before, they had held it for about 20 years and they did not live at that address. Their mailing address was different.
mhm,
So I already knew that that was a place that was rented out to somebody else and rented out up until like a couple months, I think like 2 or 3 months before it was listed.
mhm.
So pretty good chance everything's working.
And you mentioned that you have a 10-year plan. What is your 10-year plan? What's your life look in 2035?
Yeah, 2035, I ideally have about 7K in cash flow, which sounds like a really modest amount compared to like what other I've heard other people's numbers are. Like some people say like 20K, 30K, whatever. And I'm like, I don't care as long as I have like a good 7K. Um, and part of that is like one, I don't really enjoy a lot of the things that other people enjoy. So when I went on vacation, I got bored. 'Cause I'm spoiled. I got bored. I missed my job and I missed my friends and I want to come back. So long international travel is not like a big priority for me. The most of the things that I really like to do, I can kind of already do for free or very cheaply. Like I love hiking, kind of like hiking moderate, not hiking crazy, just like a chill hike. And then the majority of the ways I see my friends are through things that like we already pay membership for. So that's already like a flat fee. Like I already like if I really need to, I could probably live off like 1.5K rice and beans and eggs. I'm happy. I know I just don't need that much, but I have to do real estate because my industry that I'm in, aside from hedging for inflation and just like good financial sense, the industry I'm in is not solid. So I'm a biologist and I'm a biologist in biotech, which 10, 20 years ago was a lot more stable than it currently is now. Like right now, even if you wanted to be at a company for 20, 30 years, not going to happen. Like the majority of my colleagues have like a 2 to 5 year tenure at any company. And then even when things are going well, there are situations that happen. Like a good friend of mine, she was let go because their company caught the eye of a really big competitor. Competitor bought them, and then the competitor has this huge portfolio of other companies. And then they said that, hey, like our bottom 10%, we're just cutting. So even though her company was doing so well, everything was like hitting all the markers, everyone's thought they were doing fine. Guess what? You're part of 10% of that huge conglomerate. So like gone.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there's
you
that, and like
know.
just market volatility, lots of layoffs, like, and that's another thing too with like the layoffs. Like I already was used to having a large emergency fund, so the idea of just like stashing more money wasn't crazy to me.
Awesome. And something I wanted to ask you, because you're a girl and you're in an industry dominated by men, how's been your experience coming into this industry, I guess?
Yeah. So far it's been largely positive. I think one of the things that helps though is that uh, my main experience with other real estate investors has been through ORAT, which is already kind of like a little bit sheltered from the general population. And then also this last past year, I've just been looking at my buy box, which is very much like a just on the screen experience. But when it came to reaching out to people, especially in Rochester, there were some moments where, it felt like a little bit of like a patronizing kind of situation, because even though I was going for like the A, B plus areas, there were people that kind of just like, said like a couple of like redundant things about like some very obvious issues that I don't know if they would have necessarily said that to a man, but maybe not, maybe. And then also being extremely direct wasn't that appreciated, I felt like. I felt like there was this one lawyer in particular who, around the time of closing, um, I was just following up on a couple issues, and it seemed from his tone of voice that he didn't appreciate me being kind of as on it. And I was
Hmm.
like, it's my house. I'm putting like
Right.
140K. I want to have these results. And then after that, I only heard from his associate. So that was interesting, you know.
Wow.
But there have also been some other kind of odd moments where um I kind of feel like their mentality has worked for me in that there are some like protective elements that comes out, and like yeah, there's a bit of patronizing with it too, but I don't think they see me as competition, which to be honest, at this stage I'm not. I'm really not. It's my first year. I don't really have that kind of movement yet. But they don't really see me as competition. They kind of divest a lot more than I think they would to like a guy that they think is going to directly compete with X, Y, and Z for whatever they see. So that has worked in my favor quite a bit. Um, and there's also just been just an interesting view of just seeing how some of the other women have been treated. So there are like some online Facebook groups that I've reached out to, especially in the Rochester area. And there was a couple women I interacted with from there, and they have some interesting stories about dealing with contractors and dealing with people who um, kind of just disregard their portfolios, kind of how much impact they really have.
Hmm. Yeah, I share those stories for sure. But thank you so much for coming to my channel. This was lovely. I will have you back so you can talk about your second property. And
Sure.
then hopefully it'll be sometime soon and then you're ready to kill it and sell our financing. But I hope you had fun.
Thank you. I definitely did.
Okay, guys, I'll see you on my next video.